global warming may not be happening. If it's happening, it's not very severe. And to try to do something about it will be extremely expensive. It will mean a total revolution of the world's economy, and it will mean almost a centralized control over the world's economy, which is A, unpalatable, and B, is likely to lead to economic disasters.
And there will be an international meeting at the end of this year, and we must get verifiable commitments to fight climate change.
There is a meeting in Paris. It's self-evident from the media coverage that there is a huge amount of political and other effort going in to making that meeting a success. Now, in the eyes of the people holding the meeting, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, success involves implementing an international tax on emissions of carbon dioxide, and the logic behind that is that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, which it is, and human activities puts extra carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which we do. It's only a small extra amount, but it is extra, and the fear is that that will cause dangerous global warming.
Climate change is real. It is caused by human activity.
Scientific consensus is that we are causing global warming.
After 20 years of intense investigation, there is not a shred of positive evidence that human carbon dioxide emissions cause or will cause dangerous global warming. Their claim is it will cause dangerous extra warming. That's hotly disputed, and I would say the science is simply not there to show that.
The scientific community is virtually unanimous.
The science of climate is very, very, very complicated, and it is not settled.
The science is not up for debate.
I believe, and Pope Francis made this point, this is a moral issue.
To make science a process, not a religion, not a belief system.
This is a moral issue.
My duty as a scientist to try to speak out where something unjust.
COP21 they're seeing as simply the last chance. Obama's made it his foreign and domestic legacy.
The Pentagon says that climate change poses immediate risks to our national security.
By December this year, they will have their climate treaty in place.
They're going to try. And should they pull it off? No. Are they going to try? Yes, they're going to try very hard.
It's going to depend on what the United States does. Okay, if the United States is on board, all the countries are going to fall on board.
The governments in the world are looking for revenue, and that's why you have this world movement to focusing on climate as a mechanism for generating revenue.
We introduced the first piece of climate change legislation which called for a tax on carbon.
There's a concerted effort to get the public to believe that taxation is going to be the solution to, quote, climate change.
Market-based programs to reduce carbon pollution.
The term carbon pollution is a scientific contradiction because carbon is a solid, it's not a gas, it really means CO2, and CO2 is not a pollutant.
People keep saying rising carbon dioxide is bad. How so? Because carbon dioxide is food for plants. That's another thing that we must remember. The question is actually on why we think that the sun is a far more dominant driver of climate change when compared, let's say, to rising atmospheric carbon dioxide.
When there is more carbon dioxide, the temperature gets warmer.
Al Gore showed the temperature going up and down over the last 700,000 or 800,000 years. The temperature and CO2 are going up and down more or less together. The question that he did not ask nor answer was, why did the CO2 go down? If reducing CO2 caused the temperature to go down, why did it go down? Where did it go? When the CO2 came up and the temperature came up, where did the CO2 come from and why? If you look closely at the data, which he did not do, for every case where they have the ability, the temporal ability to look, a detail at the time axis, the temperature changes always occurred before the CO2 changes. The temperature changes always occurred before the CO2 changes. And unless you're into retroactive causality, it just doesn't make any sense.
In all of this time, 650,000 years, the CO2 level has never gone above 300 parts per million.
When Al Gore says that CO2 levels are at the highest ever, it's simply false. The average CO2 level for the last 300 million years has been around 1,000 to 1,200 parts per million, which is 3 times the current level. And yet Al Gore is saying the current level is dangerous.
A lot of the benefits of CO2 tends to be kind of swept under the table, probably because of the good news that it brings. And so people tend to focus more on the climate, which really, in my opinion, the temperatures are really not going to warm that much from an increase in CO2, if at all.
The bigger your carbon dioxide footprint, the better for the planet. Why? Because carbon dioxide is the gas of life. It's the basis for the whole food chain, and emitting more of it greens the planet. We can actually measure that, and in the last 20 or 30 years, there's about a 13% increase in vegetation, including in places like the Sahel belt, the semi-arid desert south of the Sahara Desert, has all greened.
Everything was deliberately designed to focus on CO2. It's a combination of perception problems, of statistical deception.
Shrinking ice caps.
Storms are getting stronger.
Stronger storms.
Extreme precipitation events.
Longer wildfire seasons.
Permafrost is thawing.
Deeper droughts.
The Antarctic shelf is breaking up.
Deception, all done with a political purpose. If it was done for a scientific purpose, the whole thing would be presented very differently. But it's been done for a political purpose, as I said, to demonize CO2.
As for those who remain unconvinced, I'd respectfully suggest that they're either not paying attention or they're not living on the same planet as the rest of us.
When you're losing the argument on a factual basis, you start attacking the individual, the messenger of the argument.
Taking a stand against climate change is a moral obligation.
This entire process of saying there is a global problem that requires the West to shut down.
We have a moral responsibility.
We've got to shut down, and we've got to subsidize the rest of the world. They've been trying to achieve this at the UN for a long time. Their first attempt was the Kyoto Protocol to do with chlorofluorocarbons, and they were saying this was causing a damage to the ozone layer. It turned out that the single paper on which they relied had exaggerated tenfold the adverse effect of chlorofluorocarbons on ozone in the stratosphere. They simply got it wrong, but that didn't matter to them. They pursued it anyway, and they got the Montreal Protocol in 1992. At the meeting at which they achieved this, Professor Dick Lindzen heard Bert Bolin of the IPCC, who was in charge of it at that time, say to him, "Just you wait. You see, we've got this one through far easier than we ever should on the science. Now just wait until you see what we do with global warming." And this was only 4 years after the IPCC had been set up, but already the UN was planning to use this as a way of making itself into a global government, which is what they've been doing over the past few years, and they will hope to set the seal on that at Paris this December. And nobody will elect them, nobody will have any chance to control them, but they will control the world.
That's why CO2 became the focus, and it was done through the definition of climate change that Maurice Strong set up at through the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
With all the evidence that we've amassed in our preparations for the Stockholm Conference, including the views of many of the world's leading scientists, I am convinced that the prophets of doom have got to be taken seriously.
If you look at who some of those members of the Club of Rome are, one of them is John Holdren, who is the president's science advisor.
The prophets of doom have got to be taken seriously.
Climate change is directly related to the growth of terrorism.
Climate change is a direct threat.
Stop getting worried about climate change, global warming, ocean rise, polar bears dying, ice caps melting, glaciers melting. None of it is significant. It's
changes in climate, droughts and floods and tornadoes and hurricanes are all forever a natural part of the climate of Earth and are not being intensified in any way significantly by the activities of mankind.